Sarah had always been the responsible one. From the moment she was old enough to balance a checkbook, she became the family's unofficial financial manager, problem solver, and crisis negotiator. While her younger brother Ben had the freedom to chase every fleeting dream starting failed businesses, investing in get-rich-quick schemes, Sarah was the one cleaning up the mess. Their father, Edmund, was notorious for gambling away more money than he made, leaving Sarah to secretly cover mortgage payments when he fell behind. And Nina, her mother, had an insatiable appetite for luxury she couldn't afford, maxing out credit cards in pursuit of an image she was desperate to maintain. Yet, despite all of this, Sarah's success was something they loved to brag about to their friends. "Our Sarah, she's a financial genius," Nina would gush at social events, as if her daughter's intelligence was a trophy for the family rather than the lifeline keeping them from sinking. So, when Sarah received a text message from Nina reading, "Darling, please come over at 7. We have something special planned," she felt an all too familiar sense of dread. Special, in her family's language, rarely meant something truly good. It meant an elaborate trap disguised as affection. It meant another financial request, another scheme, another way to exploit her loyalty. Still, she pulled into their suburban driveway at exactly 7:05 p.m., late enough to establish control, but not enough to set Nina off. Through the window, Sarah could see shadows moving inside, hushed voices barely contained behind drawn curtains. A surprise party. How predictable. She inhaled deeply before ringing the doorbell, bracing herself for whatever manipulation lay ahead. The door flew open, and there was Nina, perfectly polished as always, wearing her most artificial smile. Surprise, the room erupted as relatives emerged from hiding spots. Sarah scanned the crowd, taking in the faces of family members she hadn't seen in years: Uncle Pete, Aunt Margaret, distant cousins, people who never showed up when she actually needed them. The only familiar and genuine face in the crowd was Reagan, her best friend, who had clearly been roped into this disaster. "Oh my goodness!" Sarah gasped, feigning shock. She had mastered the art of pretending for them. "You really shouldn't have." "Nothing's too good for my baby girl," Nina cooed, pulling Sarah into a lavender-scented hug that lasted just a moment too long. "I'm 29, Mom." Details, she dismissed. "Edmund, bring Sarah a drink." Her father appeared almost too quickly, pressing a glass of scotch into her hand. "Your favorite." It wasn't. She had never liked scotch, and he knew that. Then she saw it, the legal-looking document sitting conspicuously on the coffee table, barely concealed under a magazine. Her stomach clenched. "Come sit," Nina urged, steering her toward the couch. "Everyone's here to celebrate you." But Sarah wasn't stupid. She had spent too many years deciphering their games. This wasn't a birthday celebration. It was an ambush. "We thought we'd start with presents," Nina continued, her voice light and rehearsed. "The biggest one first." Edmund moved the magazine aside, fully revealing the document. Sarah kept her expression neutral. "What's this?" "Oh, just some boring paperwork about Grandma Grace's inheritance," Nina waved her hand dismissively. "Nothing to worry about tonight. We'll deal with it later." But Sarah had already read the title, Inheritance Agreement. Her heartbeat quickened, but she didn't let them see. "Actually," she said, picking up the document, "since everyone's here, we should look at this now." A ripple of tension spread across the room. Nina's perfect smile wavered. "No, darling, let's have fun first." Sarah ignored her and opened the folder. She read the words aloud. "I, Sarah, hereby voluntarily relinquish all rights to the inheritance left by Grace Olson." She stopped reading, gripping the paper tightly. You want me to sign away everything? It's not like that, Edmund interjected smoothly. We're just redistributing it for tax purposes. Sarah let out a humorless laugh. Right. By giving everything to you and Mom. The silence in the room was deafening. We're family, Nina said, her voice taking on the practiced guilt-inducing tone Sarah had heard too many times before. Everything we have is shared. Sarah's patience snapped. Like when you shared the money I lent for Ben's business? Or when you shared the truth about Dad's gambling debts? Nina's face hardened. We're your parents. We've given you everything. No, Sarah corrected, her voice steady. You've taken everything. And now you want Grace's inheritance too. Ben stepped forward, his face twisted with guilt. Sarah, just sign it. They won't stop until you do. That's why you're here, she asked, her chest tightening. To convince me? They said it would be better coming from me. Of course they did. Sarah stood up, still clutching the document. How long have you been planning this? Waiting for the perfect moment to ambush me? Nobody's ambushing anyone, Edmund tried weakly. We're celebrating your birthday. My birthday is next month. Nina's mask finally cracked. Just sign the damn paper, Sarah. Stop being so difficult. Sarah laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. Difficult? Is that what you call refusing to be manipulated? The anger bubbling inside her reached its peak. Without a second thought, she walked to the fireplace, held the document over the flame, and let it catch fire. You stupid girl! Nina shrieked, lunging forward. Do you have any idea what you've done? Sarah watched the paper turn to ash. I know exactly what I've done, she said, turning to face them. I'm done being your bank. She grabbed her purse and locked eyes with Reagan. Let's go. As they reached the door, Ben called out, Sarah, wait. She hesitated. You can tell them about the video message from Grandma Grace, she said. The horror in Nina's face was almost worth the entire evening. Almost. What video? Nina demanded, her voice shaking. Sarah smiled. I guess you'll find out soon enough. 3 days after walking out of her parents' disastrous surprise party, Sarah sat in her grandmother Grace's lawyer's office, replaying the video message that had shaken everything. Grace had always known who Nina and Edmund were, how they manipulated and drained the people around them, especially Sarah. But what shocked her most was that her grandmother had planned for this moment long before she passed. I've watched them use you for years, Sarah, Grace's voice said from the screen, her silver hair perfectly styled even from her hospital bed. And I won't let them take from you what I spent a lifetime building. Now, sitting in Linda's office, Sarah realized that she finally had the upper hand. Your mother called me 17 times last night, Linda said, flipping through a stack of documents. Your father tried to visit my house. Sounds about right, Sarah muttered, placing her own folder of financial records on the desk. Did they threaten you? Nina attempted to fire me, Linda smirked. She seems to have forgotten that I was your grandmother's lawyer, not hers. Classic Nina. Linda pulled out a thick file. Grace knew exactly what your parents would try to do. The video message was just the beginning. The real protection is in the terms of the inheritance. Sarah sat up straighter. What do you mean? Linda pressed play again on the video. Sarah, my dear, here's what I've done. The inheritance is structured in a way that makes it impossible for your parents to access it, through you or anyone else. Every penny is locked in a trust with 3 strict conditions. Sarah listened carefully as her grandmother outlined them. 1. The money could only be used for Sarah's personal living expenses, verified charitable donations, or investments in businesses that had no connection to her family. 2. Any attempt to contest the will or pressure Sarah into sharing would trigger an automatic donation of 50% of the trust's total value to charity. 3. If Nina or Edmund tried to manipulate or guilt Sarah into signing anything, every one of their past financial transactions involving Sarah would be reviewed for fraud. Linda stopped the video. Your grandmother was meticulous. She anticipated everything. Sarah exhaled slowly. So, if they challenge this, half the money disappears? Exactly. A silence stretched between them, then Sarah's phone buzzed. Another text from Nina. We need to talk. Call me immediately. Perfect timing, Linda said. Put her on speaker. Sarah did. Hello, Mom. Don't hello, Mom me, Nina snapped. Where are you? We need to discuss your behavior the other night. I'm with Linda right now, Sarah said smoothly. A pause. Then, put her on the phone. You're on speaker, Linda said. Nina's voice sharpened. What nonsense have you been telling my daughter? I demand to see Grace's full will immediately. Of course, Linda replied. I'm sending you an official copy today, along with a detailed explanation of the trust conditions. Trust conditions? Nina repeated, her voice rising. What trust conditions? Sarah smiled. The ones Grandma put in place to make sure you and Dad never get a dime. That's ridiculous. I'm her daughter. I have rights. Actually, Linda said calmly, you don't. And any attempt to contest the will result in an immediate charitable donation of 50% of the total inheritance. The silence on the other end was deafening. Mom? Sarah prompted. This is your grandmother's revenge, isn't it? Nina hissed. She was always a spiteful old woman. No, Sarah said. This is her protection for me. From you. Protection? Nina let out a bitter laugh. From your own family? From exactly this reaction, Sarah replied. Check your email in an hour. Everything will be explained in the letter. Don't you dare. Sarah ended the call. Linda nodded approvingly. That went about as expected. What happens now? Now, Linda said, sliding a USB drive across the desk, we wait for them to receive the letter. And when they try to fight it, we use this. Sarah picked up the USB. What's on it? Every financial record Grace kept. Proof of every loan, every deception, every scam they pulled on you. Sarah turned the small drive over in her palm, feeling its weight. She really did think of everything. Linda met her gaze. She wanted you to have proof. In case you ever doubted yourself. Sarah's grip tightened. I don't doubt myself anymore. 3 days later, Nina showed up at Sarah's office, carrying a bag from her so-called favorite restaurant. Darling, she cooed, stepping inside before Sarah could stop her. I brought your favorite mushroom risotto. Sarah arched a brow. I'm allergic to mushrooms, Mom. Always have been. Nina waved dismissively. Oh, is that right? Well, no matter. We need to talk. Everything that needs to be said was in Linda's letter. About that, Nina perched on the edge of the desk. Perhaps we all overreacted. We understand you're upset. Sarah didn't look up from her screen. Do you now? Surely, we can find a compromise, Nina tried. There is no compromise. The terms are clear. Terms can be changed, Nina said, her voice soft but dangerous. Sarah finally looked at her. Any attempt to challenge the terms results in half the money going to charity. Is that clear enough for you? Don't be difficult, Sarah, Nina said, her voice shifting into its usual guilt-laced melody. Your father and I, everything we've done has been for you. Sarah lifted her phone, scrolling through years of bank transfers. Was it for me when you took out credit cards in my name? Or when you guilt me into paying for Ben's failed restaurants? Family helps family, Nina said stiffly. Sarah pulled up another file. Like when you told me Dad needed surgery money, but it actually went to his bookie? Nina's face hardened. You've been keeping tabs on us? No, Sarah said. Grandma Grace did. She stood up. Here's what's going to happen. You and Dad will stop trying to go around Grace's conditions. No more loopholes. No more guilt trips. And if we don't? Nina's voice wavered. Sarah pulled out the USB drive. Then everything on here goes to the FBI. For the first time, real fear flickered in Nina's eyes. Sarah smiled. Goodbye, Mom. As Nina stormed out, Sarah texted Linda. It's done. She knows. Linda's response was immediate. Be ready. They're not giving up yet. Sarah leaned back in her chair, watching the sun set outside her window. For years, she had been their safety net, their bank, their pawn. But now, for the first time, she was something else entirely. The Capitol Grill was her father's kind of place, high-end, with just enough exclusivity to make him feel important. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, her laptop set up and the documents Linda had prepared neatly arranged in front of her. If Edmund thought this dinner was going to be a simple negotiation, he was about to realize just how thoroughly he had lost control. At exactly 7:00 p.m., he walked in, wearing his usual confident smirk and his lucky deal-making tie. Princess, you look lovely, he greeted, moving in for his usual hug. Sarah didn't stand. Please, sit. His smile faltered slightly as he noticed her laptop open. I thought we could just have a nice dinner, father and daughter. We will, Sarah replied smoothly. Right after we discuss a few things. The waiter approached, and Edmund ordered his usual scotch. Make it a double, he added, already sensing the weight of the conversation ahead. Just water for me, Sarah said. I need to stay clear-headed. Edmund let out a small, nervous chuckle. Always so serious. He took a sip of his drink. You know, your mother was quite upset after your little spectacle at Linda's office today. Was she upset about trying to manipulate me into signing away my inheritance or about trying to circumvent Grandma Grace's wishes? He sighed, leaning back in his chair. Look, about that, we've been thinking. Sarah cut him off. Let me stop you right there. She turned her laptop toward him. Before you continue, there's something you need to see. His expression shifted as he glanced at the screen, where a spreadsheet of financial transactions was displayed. Remember last year, Sarah began, when you told me you needed $50,000 for an emergency gallbladder surgery? Edmund's face paled slightly. That's ancient history. Sarah clicked on the next slide. Funny how these bank transfers match exactly with your payments to your bookie. He stiffened. How did you? Grandma Grace kept records of everything. She pulled out a folder. Like this loan for Ben's third restaurant that somehow ended up in your offshore account. That's private information. No, Dad. That's fraud. Sarah laid out more papers, each one more damning than the last. Just like the credit cards you and Mom opened in my name when I was in college. Edmund's hand trembled as he reached for his scotch. We were protecting you. Building your credit. By maxing them out and leaving me with the debt? Sarah asked. You only paid them off after I threatened to go to the police. That's enough, Edmund snapped, slamming his glass onto the table, making heads turn. You're right, Sarah said calmly. It is enough. That's why Grandma put those conditions in place. Edmund's face darkened. Your grandmother was a manipulative old woman. No, she was a woman who saw exactly what you and Mom were doing to me, Sarah shot back. She turned her laptop back around and met his gaze. And who left me everything I need to prove it. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, he leaned in, switching tactics. His voice softened. Princess, surely we can work something out. Family helps family, right? Sarah let out a short, humorless laugh. That's exactly what Mom said today. Because it's true, he insisted. Everything we did for you. She pulled out one final document. Like when you took out a life insurance policy on me without my knowledge? The color drained from his face. That's not I can explain. Save it, Sarah said. She pushed the final folder toward him. Here's what's going to happen. You and Mom will stop trying to go around Grace's conditions. No more surprise visits. No more legal loopholes. No more guilt trips. And if we don't? Sarah folded her hands. Then all these documents go to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Edmund sat back, deflated. You'd do that to your own father? You did this to yourself, Dad. The waiter returned, ready to take their order. I've lost my appetite, Edmund muttered. That's fine, Sarah said, gathering her things. I have dinner plans with Reagan anyway. As she stood to leave, she added, oh, and one more thing, I'm donating 20% of the inheritance to gambling addiction programs. Consider it your contribution to society. You can't do this. I already have. She turned and walked away, leaving Edmund alone at the table, staring into his empty scotch glass. Underscore 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 underscore. The next day, Linda's conference room felt smaller than usual, packed with Sarah's entire family. Nina sat rigidly at one end of the table, Edmund slumped beside her, and Ben had positioned himself in the middle, seemingly torn between loyalty and morality. Linda stood at the head of the table. Let's begin. We're here, Nina interjected, because my daughter has lost her mind. Actually, Sarah said, pressing a button on the remote control, we're here to watch something. The lights dimmed, and Grace's face appeared on the screen. If you're watching this, her voice said, it means my family has done exactly what I expected them to do. Turn it off, Nina snapped. Sit down, Linda commanded. Or the 50% charity clause activates immediately. Nina clenched her jaw but obeyed. Grace's voice continued, Nina, my disappointing daughter. I watched you manipulate and exploit your own child, the same way you tried to exploit me. Did you think I didn't know about the credit cards? The fake emergencies? The endless demands for money? Edmund reached for Nina's hand, but she pulled away. And Edmund, Grace's voice hardened, you gambled away your daughter's generosity, lied about medical emergencies, and treated her like your personal ATM. This is slander, Edmund muttered. Every word I'm saying is documented, Grace continued. Every loan. Every lie. Every manipulation. And now, here's what will happen. The screen changed to show a series of legal documents. The entire inheritance is in an irrevocable trust. Valerie is the sole beneficiary. Any attempt to challenge it will trigger an immediate charitable donation of 50%. We know this already, Nina snapped. Get to the point. The point, Nina, is that I'm not finished, Grace's voice continued. Linda handed Sarah an envelope. Sarah opened it and read aloud. I, Grace Olson, declare that in addition to the monetary inheritance, all controlling shares in Harvey Industries will be transferred to my granddaughter, Sarah Harvey, effective immediately. Nina screamed. The company, she shrieked. You're giving her the company? Your father's company, Grace corrected. The one you and Edmund have been systematically destroying with your mismanagement and embezzlement. Ben finally spoke up. Is that true? Have you been stealing from the company? Of course not, Edmund blurted. But his face told a different story. Linda handed out folders. The proof is all here. Nina lunged for the documents. Sarah stood up. Mom, this is over. We're still your parents. Nina called after her. Sarah paused at the door. That's the saddest part. You could have just been my parents. But you chose to be something else entirely. Then, she walked out, leaving them with nothing but the wreckage of their own greed. Sarah stood at the head of the boardroom, facing a table full of skeptical executives. The same men who once nodded along to her father and mother's schemes now looked at her with uncertainty, their expressions unreadable. But she wasn't here for their approval. She was here to lead. Good morning, she began, her voice steady and confident. I know many of you worked closely with my father and my grandmother, Grace. Today, we're going to discuss a new direction for Harvey Industries, one that prioritizes ethical business practices, employee well-being, and community impact. A few of the board members exchanged glances, but no one interrupted. She clicked through the first slide of her presentation, outlining new financial policies that would prevent the kind of reckless spending and mismanagement that had nearly sunk the company under her parents' control. She moved to the next slide, introducing the Grace Harvey Foundation for Financial Literacy and Family Counseling, an initiative that would allocate 20% of the company's annual profits toward helping families break cycles of financial abuse and mismanagement. The room buzzed with murmurs, some skeptical, others intrigued. This is not just a new chapter for Harvey Industries, Sarah continued. It's a course correction. One that ensures what happened before will never happen again. She could feel Ben's eyes on her from across the room, silently supporting her as she outlined her grandmother's vision. Grace had always known the true value of wealth, not in hoarding it, but in using it to make meaningful change. Her phone vibrated subtly on the table. A text from Reagan. They're here. Sarah took a deep breath. Right on schedule. If you'll excuse me, she said, closing her laptop, I have a personal matter to attend to. She walked toward the lobby, heels clicking against the marble floors. When she arrived, she saw them, Nina and Edmund, standing by the reception desk, arguing with security. They looked smaller than she remembered, their usual air of authority diminished by their desperation. Let them up, she told the guard. As soon as they saw her, Nina rushed forward. Finally, you're being reasonable. Sarah held up a hand. Stop. I'm not changing my mind. I'm not giving you money. I'm not reversing any decisions. Edmund scoffed. Then why let us in? To give you these. She handed them each an envelope. Nina opened hers with suspicion, her eyes scanning the papers inside. What is this? Information about gambling addiction support groups, Sarah replied. And financial counseling services. The foundation will cover all costs. We don't need charity, Nina spat. No, Sarah said. You need help. Real help. Edmund's expression hardened. You would abandon your own parents? Sarah met his gaze, unwavering. No, Dad. I'm trying to save you from yourselves. But I can't do that if you won't accept it. She turned to leave, but Nina's voice stopped her. Sarah, wait. For a brief moment, Sarah hesitated. She turned just enough to see Nina clutching the envelope, her hands shaking slightly. It was the first real emotion she had shown since this battle began. Think about it, Sarah said, softer now. The choice is yours. She didn't wait for an answer. She walked away, leaving them standing there, envelopes in hand. Back in her office, Ben and Reagan were waiting. How'd it go? Reagan asked. About as expected, Sarah said, sitting behind her desk. Ben crossed his arms. Do you think they'll actually go to counseling? Sarah sighed. I don't know. Maybe someday. Maybe never. But for the first time, their choices aren't my responsibility. She picked up the framed photo on her desk. Not an old family picture, but a new one of her, Ben, and Reagan at the beach. A chosen family. A better family. Ben smiled. Grandma Grace would be proud. Sarah opened her desk drawer and pulled out a bottle of champagne. She left this for today, she said, holding it up. Specifically for this moment. Reagan grabbed the glasses. Then let's toast. They raised their glasses, and as Sarah looked around at the people who had stood by her through everything, she finally felt free. To Grace, Reagan said. To freedom, Ben added. Sarah smiled. To new beginnings. Through the window, she saw Nina and Edmund leaving the building. Maybe they'd understand one day. Maybe they wouldn't. But for the first time in her life, their choices were no longer her burden to bear. Sarah sat at her desk, staring at the invitation in front of her. It was embossed with gold lettering, formal and elegant, her mother's signature touch. But the words beneath it sent a cold chill through her spine. Join us for a special family gathering to discuss the future of Harvey Industries. She knew exactly what that meant. It wasn't an invitation, it was an ambush. For years, her parents had used manipulation to keep her under their control. Her father, Edmund, with his promises of just one more loan. Her mother, Nina, with her endless guilt trips about what family owes each other. But Sarah wasn't the same girl they had once controlled. Grace had made sure of that. Her grandmother had always seen through Nina and Edmund's schemes. And in the end, she had left Sarah more than just an inheritance, she had left her power. And today, Sarah was finally going to use it. Underscore 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 underscore. The conference room at Harvey Industries was filled with familiar faces. Her mother sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed in her designer suit. Edmund, beside her, drummed his fingers impatiently on the polished wood. Ben sat further down, looking torn. And then there was Reagan, standing quietly in the back, offering silent support. "Sarah, darling," Nina purred, gesturing to the empty seat beside her. "Sit. Let's talk as a family." "I'm fine standing." Nina's lips thinned. "Fine. Then let's get right to it." She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a thick document, sliding it across the table. Sarah picked it up, already knowing what it was. A contract. A proposal for her to voluntarily hand over the company's shares. Grace had left her transferring control of Harvey Industries back to her parents. Sarah placed the document back on the table without opening it. "No." Nina's smile didn't falter, but there was an edge to it now. "Sarah, you don't even know what the terms are." "I know exactly what they are." She met her mother's gaze head-on. "You want me to hand over my shares so you and Dad can clean up your financial mess. You need this company to cover for all the money you've lost, your gambling, your debts, your fraud." Edmund slammed his hand on the table. "Watch your tone, young lady." Sarah crossed her arms. "Or what? You'll cut me off?" The room was silent. "Sarah," Ben said, his voice softer. "Maybe we can find a compromise." "There is no compromise," she said, looking at her brother. "They don't want a compromise. They want control." Nina let out a sigh, feigning exhaustion. "Sarah, we're trying to protect the company. Think about the employees, the shareholders." "Oh, please," Sarah scoffed. "You're not worried about them. You're worried about yourselves." She reached into her bag and pulled out her own folder. "Luckily, I came prepared too." She flipped it open and began distributing documents around the table. Financial statements. Fake accounts. Emails. Evidence. Edmund paled. "Where did you get these?" Sarah smiled. "From Grandma Grace." Nina's carefully crafted composure shattered. "She wouldn't." "Oh, but she did." Sarah leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough. "She left me everything. And she left instructions on what to do when not if you tried to pull something like this." Reagan stepped forward and handed Sarah a USB drive. She plugged it into the conference room screen, and a familiar face filled the monitor. "Grace." Her grandmother's voice echoed through the room. "If you're watching this, it means my daughter and her husband have done exactly what I expected them to do." Nina sucked in a breath. "Turn it off." "Nina," Grace's voice continued, "I watched you manipulate and exploit your child the same way you tried to exploit me. That's why I made sure you'll never get your hands on this company again. Sarah watched as her mother's face twisted in barely concealed rage. You set this up, Nina hissed. No, Mom. You did. Sarah turned to the rest of the board members, who were all staring at the screen in stunned silence. Grace's final decision was to protect this company. She left everything to me, with strict conditions. Edmund's voice was hoarse. What conditions? Sarah clicked to the next slide. The entire inheritance is locked in a trust. None of you can access it. Any attempt to contest the will automatically donates half of it to charity. Nina's face drained of color. And if you try to sabotage the company, Sarah added, looking directly at her mother, the trust triggers a full-scale internal audit. Edmund looked like he might pass out. That's not legal. Sarah smiled. It is. Grandma made sure of it. The silence in the room stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Nina did what she always did. She lied. Darling, she said, her voice soft, almost pitying. You don't understand. We were only trying to help. Sarah shook her head. No, you were trying to take. And now you've lost. She picked up her bag, turned to the board, and straightened her shoulders. I'll see you all at the next shareholders' meeting. As she walked out, Reagan fell into step beside her. Ben hesitated, looking at their parents before finally standing up and following. Sarah, he said. She turned, hoping, for once, he wouldn't disappoint her. I think I want to work with you. For you. Sarah studied his face, searching for deception, but for the first time in years, she didn't see any. She nodded. Okay. As they stepped into the elevator, Reagan grinned. Well, that was dramatic. Sarah exhaled, feeling something new for the first time in years. Relief. I think, she said, as the elevator doors closed, that's finally over. Sarah stood in the lobby of Harvey Industries, watching the board members file into the conference room. The weight of what she was about to do settled heavily on her shoulders. She had spent years cleaning up after her parents, covering their debts, and being their financial safety net. But today was different. Today, she wasn't just walking into another confrontation. She was ending this cycle once and for all. Her parents had played their last card, attempting to manipulate her into surrendering her inheritance. But they had underestimated her, and more importantly, they had underestimated Grace. Her grandmother had seen through them years ago. That's why she had left everything to Sarah, ensuring her parents could never manipulate their way into control again. And now, with the final board meeting about to begin, Sarah was going to make sure they never got another chance. As she walked into the boardroom, she wasn't the same woman who had once let her parents guilt her into submission. She wasn't the girl who had spent years second-guessing herself, always trying to earn the love they never truly gave. No, she was Grace's granddaughter. And she was ready. Underscore 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 underscore. The tension in the boardroom was suffocating. Nina sat stiffly at the far end of the table, her usual composure cracking at the edges. Edmund, beside her, looked haggard, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Ben sat between them, his jaw clenched, his eyes darting between Sarah and their parents, as if trying to decide where he belonged. Linda, her grandmother's lawyer, sat to Sarah's right, perfectly composed as always. The moment she closed the door behind her, she took control of the room. "Let's begin," she said, sliding a stack of documents forward. "We're here to discuss the final terms of Grace Harvey's estate and company holdings." "We don't need to discuss anything," Nina cut in, her voice sharp. "This has gone far enough." Linda barely spared her a glance. "That's not for you to decide." Sarah leaned forward. "You tried to steal everything Grace left me. You tried to manipulate me into signing it all away. And now, you think you can still control this conversation?" She let out a humorless laugh. "You've already lost." Nina bristled, but before she could speak, Linda pressed a button on the remote. The large screen on the wall flickered to life, and Grace's face appeared. Her grandmother's voice, firm and unwavering, filled the room. "If you're watching this, it means my daughter and her husband have done exactly what I expected them to do." Nina sucked in a sharp breath. "Turn it off." "No," Sarah said. "You need to hear this." Grace's voice continued, calm, knowing, unshaken. "Edmund. Nina. I watched you take advantage of my granddaughter for years. I watched as you drained her resources, manipulated her kindness, and tried to convince her she owed you everything. That's why I made sure she owes you nothing." Edmund's face paled. Nina looked furious. "Sarah," the video continued, "you are stronger than you know. That's why I've ensured that neither your mother nor father can ever access your inheritance. Every dollar is protected. Every loophole is closed. And if they attempt to contest my will?" The video cut to legal documents outlining the charitable clause, the one that stated that if Nina or Edmund challenged the inheritance, 50% of the total estate would be automatically donated to charity. The room was silent. Finally, Nina spoke, her voice shaking with barely concealed rage. "You set this up." Sarah met her gaze, unwavering. "No, Mom. Grace did." Edmund ran a hand over his face. "There has to be a way around this." "There isn't," Linda said simply. "The trust is ironclad." "You've lost." For the first time, Ben spoke up. "Mom. Dad, let it go." Nina turned to him, genuinely stunned. "You're siding with her?" "I'm siding with the truth," he said. He looked at Sarah, his voice softer. "And I think it's time I start fixing my own mistakes." For once, Sarah saw something real in her brother's eyes, regret. Maybe it was too late for their parents. But Ben? Maybe he still had a chance. Nina wasn't done. She never was. She stood abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. "We are your parents. Everything we did for you." Sarah exhaled, standing as well. "No. You did it for yourselves." She gathered her papers, looking at Ben. "Are you coming?" He hesitated only for a moment before standing and stepping away from their parents. Sarah turned to the board members, most of whom had watched in stunned silence. "Harvey Industries is under new leadership. From this moment on, we're doing things differently." Linda handed Nina and Edmund an envelope. "Inside, you'll find information for financial counseling and gambling addiction programs. The Grace Harvey Foundation will cover the cost if you choose to use them." Nina stared at the envelope like it was poison. Sarah gave her one last look. "The choice is yours." But I won't be a part of this anymore. And with that, she walked out, Ben following close behind. Underscore 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 underscore. Outside, Reagan was waiting, a knowing smile on her face. That was brutal, she said. Sarah let out a long breath. Yeah. But it's over. Ben ran a hand through his hair. What now? Sarah looked at the skyline, finally free. Now? We build something better. She turned to her brother. Are you in? Ben nodded. Yeah. I think I am. Reagan grinned. Then let's get to work. Sarah looked back at the building that had once been her prison, the weight of her family's past no longer holding her down. She wasn't their pawn anymore. She was finally in control.